Alright, so these little pink things are what hold the thing on. I think I broke one of them there. I'm gonna try to buy another one. Other than that, that's that. And I took off all the connections, and I pulled this off so that the door panel is completely off. It looks like the speaker has gotten wet or something. But you can definitely hear that the voice coil is blowing in it, and it sounded horrible. So let's get her out of there. Alright, I'm using a 5/16 on these. And there's 4 of them. There's the problem, it's a junk but loud. Okay. Went to the Kia dealer, got a replacement speaker for it. Opened it up while I was at the dealer to make sure it was the right one. Everything's good. There she blows. Alright, so here we go. Here's the new one. You can hear this one rattle. This one doesn't rattle. not surprising to find the brand names of JBL and Infinity on the speakers, as they are part of Harman. The connected car division of Harman is a huge part of Harman, and you might notice that all the brands you'd identify with, and here's Infinity and JBL listed. And if we looked at the amp, it'd probably be Crown. Before going to the Kia dealer and buying the replacement speaker, I stopped by a car stereo store to see about buying a pair of aftermarket speakers. It did not go so well. The guy proceeded to tell me that this speaker had a crossover in it that drives the tweeter near the mirror. Obviously, this speaker does not have a crossover network. I say obviously because the crossover network will have very large capacitors and inductors to build a high-pass filter, so the tweeter only gets the high frequencies of the audio. I had done some research online before heading out to buy speakers, and I knew I needed some adapter rings and some harness adapters as well. The car stereo place didn't have these in stock. The salesman also proceeded to tell me that this was a 10-watt speaker and he would be upgrading me to a 40-watt speaker. When I told him I had estimated these were around 60-watt speakers, he looked at me like I was crazy. I also know that crossover networks are not used in later model cars due to the fact that amplifier chips and audio digital signal processor chips have dropped in price to where it is cheaper to put a DSP that does the crossover and then do separate amplifiers for the tweeters and the mid-range speakers. This works a lot better as the amplifier power is balanced. The tweeter takes less power than mid-range, and the mid-range takes less power than the woofer. Needless to say, I didn't buy from him. At the dealer, I was able to only buy the one speaker I needed, and that saved me some money. How I estimated the watts was I took the value, the 30 amp value that's driving the amplifier, and I divided that by 5, and I got about 72 watts. So there's 50 or 60 watts. Car stereo place told me that this had a built-in subwoofer, and right away, or a built-in crossover, and right away I knew he was telling me a story, because there was only one wire hooked up to this, and the tweeters fed off a separate wire out of the wiring harness. So I think the crossover is built into the stereo in this car, because the crossover is pretty big. It's got a pretty big coil and a pretty big capacitor, and I don't see either of those in this speaker. So I'm going to try and tear her apart here, since it's broken anyways. I've already replaced it with a new one from the factory, from the Kia factory. Just kind of prove to myself that I'm right and the guy at the car stereo shop was an idiot, which I shouldn't have to prove. That should be self-evident. He's working at a car stereo shop. Yeah, this had come loose, and I think that's what was rattling. I could have maybe just glued that with some epoxy or something, or some silicone. Oh, there's something wrong there too, so I think that was loose, and I think something's kind of catching in there. I don't know what. I definitely don't see any crossover. So these wires come off the voice coil, and there are molded connections in there straight up to this connector. So yeah, there's no crossover built into this, but I'll pull it apart a little further just to make sure. just a copper voice coil. And a pretty good sized magnet if you're into magnets. I know I got ohms, it was just rattling. So I think you could have just glued that back on with some silicone. Nice tight bead of silicone. I bet it would have solved the rattle problem. But sometimes you don't know until you get it apart. And by then you don't want to take it apart and not have a new part to put in it. So look like it heated up a bit. The voice coil. So here's the antique one I'm working on. The voice coil is pretty close, actually. You see there's a lot fewer windings on this voice coil. But I might use those. I might use these big pieces of braid to replace these wires coming off of here, because they'll flex a little better and last longer than this. They just used the solid wire back in the 30s. But this is a project I'm working on. You can cut this and put in an aftermarket speaker maybe. This one was like I think they call them a 6.5 or 6 1/4. So you probably have to go down to a 5 1/4 if you wanted to reuse this ring. But they look like there were some rings they made. So you could just cut that magnet back out and then re-drill and bolt a new smaller speaker in. But you don't want to go smaller, you want to go bigger. And if you're replacing your speaker, you want more bass, not less. So I just went with the factory one, and it's going to be fine. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. I'm also on Patreon.